Welcome to Success in Motion. Join us as we dive deep with top leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals, uncovering strategies to grow, scale, and succeed.
Welcome back to the Success in Motion podcast. I am your host, Michael Bishop, and I am joined today by Chris Foster. Chris is one of three founders and the CIO of Blue Jay App, which I'll let him tell you more about what that app actually does, but I'm super excited about the initiative that they're working on. He also is the law enforcement liaison for the Blue Jay App. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Michael. As you said, yes, my name is Chris Foster. I'm out of Oklahoma. I've been putting a few years into what I'm doing, and I'm excited to share with the people about what it is that I'm doing and how I plan to revolutionize the traffic stop.
That sounds like quite an endeavor to revolutionize the traffic stop. But I really like what you were talking about before the show. So let's share a little bit about what that is. What is the Blue Jay app?
So the Blue Jay app is a two-sided platform that allows citizens, drivers, to communicate with their engaging police officer prior to the interaction during a traffic stop. So currently, when you get pulled over, you see the red and blue lights. You know that there's someone in the vehicle behind you. They've got a weapon. You don't know who they are. On the other side, that person doesn't know who they've just pulled over. So we just thought that, there's a way to humanize the traffic stop, and that is the ultimate goal of the Blue Jay app, is to humanize both the driver and the officer. The way this is done is, for drivers out there, you download an app, the Blue Jay app, and you create your Blue Jay driver profile. And we like to say that your Blue Jay driver profile advocates for all of your needs. So everything within this profile is voluntary. You can include as much or as little as you would like, but it is an advocate for things such as language barriers, disabilities, mental health concerns, medical conditions, military status, occupation even, and there's even a picture option. So if you want the officer to see you beforehand, the way you want to be represented, you can all have that in your profile, and it's just a way for the officer to know what you might be feeling or experiencing during the traffic stop, so that way they can better tailor the experience to you.
That sounds like quite the app. It takes a little bit of a social aspect of sharing who you are and puts it into a real life situation. So typically, and you mentioned this before we started recording, typically when you're at a traffic stop, your attention is on me, right? Oh, what was I doing? Does he know how fast I was going? Does he know that I ran that stop sign? And we don't really think about what's going through the mind of that cop. That
Right.
cop could have just stopped somebody previously who had a weapon pulled on him, and their adrenaline is way up, and
Right.
they're like, "Oh crap! Now I have to do this again.
Yeah.
What am I getting myself into?" And so we tend to not think about them as people. We just see them as a badge, and the
Exactly.
big scary badge. And so this app, you said that you can use it to better understand that situation, but
Right.
also it gives the police officer the opportunity to get to know you a little bit, who you are
Right.
as a person, besides just, okay, this is the first time I've ever heard your name,
Right.
and they're coming up on you not knowing what's going on. And so,
So
what was it that led you and your two co-founders that are with you to want to build this app?
So there is a period of time in which, the TVs and the news outlets just seem to be flooded with, you know, African American shot during a traffic stop, disabled veteran mishandled during a traffic stop, deaf person, you know, treated poorly during a traffic stop. And we just saw all these different communities affected by this. And of course, you have to take into consideration police are also involved too. So where a lot of people would, run to the Capitol or, create something in which, it's anti-police, we figured, let's try to come from a position, like a neutral position, and let's talk to these communities that have been affected, but let's also talk to the police department and see where we can find a common ground. And I think that's where, the birth of Blue Jay happened, was the intention of it being both sided. Because, if you go to just the side of the communities, they're going to be more hostile towards the police, and then it's going to turn into something that feels very like an attack. So we started off by going to these communities, talking to them, and we found out through all of this customer discovery that all these different communities have vulnerabilities during a traffic stop. So, Hispanic people and Vietnamese people, there's a language barrier. Then you have people who are protected under the ADA, and there's people with disabilities, visible and invisible. There's people with autism, and there's all these different situations that and things that need to be advocated for during a traffic stop. And on the police side, talking to them, you know, every traffic stop is different, and every person they pull over has a different concern or a different need. But currently, there's nothing on the driver themselves. So right now, when you get pulled over, the standard operating procedure is whether it be the officer typing in their computer in the car or radioing to dispatch your license tag, it pulls up all kinds of information on the vehicle, but not on the driver that operates the vehicle. So that's where we felt that we could, potentially bridge this gap between the two communities is, if a certain community is begging for police officers to, respect or treat them a certain way, both sides need to be transparent and this is what I need. If I make this available to the police officers, can this help? And, just doing a lot of, you know, I joke around and I say exposure therapy with police departments, you uncover there's so much more to that job than you would originally think. So the traffic stop is actually, I'll say a fact, the traffic stop is the most dangerous situation a police officer can be in 66% of the time. It's one of the most dangerous parts of being a police officer. So, you know, in those situations, drivers have to realize, very similar to what you said, they could have just come from one where it got hostile, someone got out of the car, and there's just a lot of fear of the unknown because you don't know who you pulled over. And similarly, on the driver's side, a lot of stereotypes or maybe a previous interaction come up in those moments on police officers. And, it's just, we believe that a small connection piece can go very far. It's similar to social media where, before we got on this podcast, I could look you up, learn a little bit about you, similar to how you did with our bios, and that makes this conversation feel a little better because we feel like we know each other. So
Yeah.
to conclude this, long-winded statement, the way it works is you create your profile on the app, and the officers have a software that pulls from your profile. So when they run your license tag, so for example, ABC 123, currently there is just vehicle history. But now, if you've created a Blue Jay profile, it's connected to your license tag. So when the officer runs ABC 123, if you have filled out a Blue Jay driver profile, it will show them your vehicle history and also anything that you would like them to know beforehand. And the kicker that I hadn't told you yet, because I was waiting for the recorded part, when they run your tag, you also receive a notification on your phone that you're being pulled over, and it shares the officer's name, picture, badge number, and department they're with. So that little microwave sharing stories just helps to de-escalate the situation because okay, the officer is going to know that I have asthma and that I might be a little, exhausted when he or she comes up there. And similarly, I'll know that the officer coming to my vehicle is so and so and their department. So it's just a quick way of, introducing yourself to each other, and that ultimately humanizes the traffic stop because you just need to know that it's a person pulling you over and you can see a picture of the officer smiling, and it just does a really good job of, occupying that anxiety spiking 2, 3 minutes while you're sitting there being pulled over.
You just said a lot right there. That was fantastic. You gave us a really good understanding of what the Blue Jay app is and what situation you would use it and why it's a good thing. How do you handle the perceived negative aspect of putting your information out there that you're giving to the cops?
Yep.
How,
So go ahead.
well, I was like, how do you overcome that barrier and get people to voluntarily give information?
Yep.
when in this day and age, it's felt like anything you say and do can be used against you. You're just
Right.
giving them more things. Oh, you're just disabled. Why are you even driving a vehicle?
Right. So it's what we, I love that question because, there is a hesitancy in volunteering this information, but, you know, asking the police department to change and it's a lot of communities that they're asking the police department to change. They want them to be better because they feel vulnerable or whatnot. So if you're asking the police department to change, it also takes both sides of the table in order to make that happen. So if you're wanting things to change, being a little more transparent with what you want or how you want things to go is the first step. So it may feel a little interesting to, volunteer that you might have a vision disability, but it would be the same situation where if something did happen because you had a vision disability, it always comes up, I just wish they would have known that beforehand. So I think it's, taking that first step of one of the pillars of Blue Jay is transparency. And, the best way to achieve a goal is to just if this is what you want, this is what it's going to take. And, we've taken the necessary steps to make sure that the information is protected and secured. But that original statement of, if you're asking for a change, typically change takes both sides taking a step.
Change does take both sides to come to the table. With that, um, you get a lot of people who say they want change, but
Mhm.
then they're not willing to change themselves. They want everybody else to change. So I think it's really cool what you've come up with the Blue Jay app, giving people the opportunity to show who they actually are, giving the officer a way to get to know them a little bit, humanizing both sides a little bit, and not just you're a criminal because you're speeding, or
Right.
you're a terrible person because you wear a badge, right?
Yep.
It's oh, Officer Chris Foster. Yeah, you are a person. You're not just that badge. So, how did you guys come up with the name for the app, Blue Jay app? What does that mean? Where does it come from?
So Blue Jay is it's funny how the app started, the name was Simply Comply, but it was spelled CALM, like comply, like stay calm.
Yeah.
Because when we first started this, we were talking to a lot of attorneys and people associated with you know traffic stops and police, and they just kept saying the best way to de-escalate a traffic stop is just to simply comply with the officer. So Simply Comply just over time started to feel almost negative because it was people felt like, like I'm just going to let the officer do whatever they want and I'm just going to comply with whatever order it is. So there was a firm in Oklahoma City who kind of got wind of what we were doing and they wanted to help out with the overall branding and the ethos of what Blue Jay was trying to accomplish. So the name Blue Jay came up because if you look at the logo, I'm not sure you can see it on here, but our logo is actually a police badge that looks like a bird. So if you can see the visual of that, that's where it came from. But the name Blue Jay comes from, of course, there's a nice tie into law enforcement with the blue being,
Mhm.
the color that represents police. But Blue Jay, of all the birds, Blue Jays are very protective of their communities and families, but they're also not seen as a bird of malice like a vulture or something like that. So, the Blue Jay occupied the space of, we're here to support and advocate for communities that are wanting things to change, but we're also not here to attack police departments. And that's why it kind of just came together as the perfect, you know, symbol for what we're trying to do. And it just tied in really well with the blue being, associated with police.
So, with this app, and maybe I'm getting too deep here, are you going to include a rating system so that people can say Officer Chris Foster was polite, respectful, he's a great person, or he
Yep.
was? So there
So
will be some accountability.
So
in the social
yes,
media space.
the way that that works is 24 hours after your interaction with the police officer. So that way you have some time to kind of decompress and not be upset that you got a ticket or something like that. So 24 hours after your interaction, you'll receive a set of questions that was um, derived from the Police Code of Conduct. And we worked with the Fraternal Order of Police in developing this questionnaire. And it's strictly just outlines the car side manner and conduct of the officer. So it'll ask basic questions such as, did your officer verbally tell you why you were pulled over? Was your officer in uniform? You know, what was your officer's overall tone of voice? So it's nothing to incriminate the officer or attack the officer. And a big part of what Blue Jay is actually to uplift and enhance the image of policing. Because throughout this journey that we've been on, I've met a handful of police officers that are just excellent, and I just think there's a lot of police officers that unfortunately have to wear the scarlet letter of the actions of another officer when you have officers that I've met that keep McDonald's toys in their patrol cars. So when they pull someone over with kids, they give them a toy or they keep candy, or, there's people who respond to, there's a snake in my garage. So, like you meet all these police officers that really truly enjoy what they love doing. So we hope that at the end of this, we share this information with the police department too. So that way, they know it's, real-time feedback on officers in the field. But what we hope to do is to be able to expose that there's way more police officers that are good than the ones you see on TV, because you talk to every chief of police and they'll say, there's really just, one or two knuckleheads out there. And I have a department full of 8,000 officers, and there's two of them that have ruined the reputation for the rest of my department. So what we hope to do is there's a specific and strategic piece in there that is also called commend your officer. And that allows you to share what your officer did right rather than wrong. And we're trying to switch that, mindset from formal complaint to formal acknowledgement. And overall, we don't want the traffic stop to be something that's scary, because it's really not a scary interaction. It's just there's people's perception of police come from news, movies, and TV. So all those things start to pop up during the traffic stop when you might have the most exemplary officer pulling you over, but you just don't know it because you haven't met him yet or whatnot. So it's time that we start acknowledging officers on jobs well done rather than just running stories that of an officer that makes a mistake in the field.
That's awesome. I genuinely believe that there are more police officers out there who want to do a good job, who want to do the right thing, who want to treat you with respect, than there are who want to abuse their power.
Yeah, and there
That's
are.
not what the news says.
Right.
That's not what you're going to see on social media,
No.
because those guys who are doing the right thing, they're not loud. They're not
Mhm.
they're not going to generate clicks, right?
Right.
So the chaos is what sells, and so that's what the media goes after. I
Right.
think it's really cool that your app is allowing not just people to receive feedback on the officer that's pulling them over, but it also allows the department to get real-time feedback on how their people are doing. So when they do find those individuals who are abusing their power,
Mhm.
there can be some sort of uh, 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 consequence for their actions. I
Best
don't
thing.
I know they do the cameras, the body cams, but
Right.
who has time to watch countless man hours of
Exactly.
videos? And sometimes those things they don't catch everything, but you can just get here's your questionnaire. You can have that auto screened by
Mhm.
a system that can say, okay, you got this many flags for this. We need to
Right.
have a conversation. Even
That's
if it's
like
one, right? You can say
talk
you were
to
flagged for this.
we talked to our city manager here, and he was the first one to say that body cameras didn't solve the problem that they thought they would. Because, body cameras are great for after the fact, but there's still nothing to prevent or help with what happens in the moment. So, the body camera is great for accountability purposes and to review things, but, it's just that, to where it's something that's reviewed rather than something like this that's, a preventative tool. during the traffic stop. And that's what we see Blue Jay as, is a tool. It's just another thing for an officer to give you that interaction that you're looking for. Because like you said, there are way more police officers that want to do good, and they want you to leave feeling like, wow, that was an excellent officer, and rather than the ones that, may want to take advantage of their power. So yes, it's definitely it's definitely the product of both sides. And that's what I think is our biggest accomplishment in doing this, is we have perfectly solidified ourselves as a bridge. That we don't feel anti-police, and we also don't feel like we're backing the blue, if you will. I don't like that expression, but you know what I mean. To the communities, it doesn't look like we're just another product for police officers to take advantage. We really have done a good job of being neutral.
That's awesome. Well, Chris, you've been at this since 2022, building this up, getting
Yep.
it to a viable product and whatnot. What has been one of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome with
Mhm.
in building an app, dealing with the police, anything in that spectrum? What has it been?
I would say three things. One of them is efficiency. The second one would be security, of course, and privacy. And then the third would just be, you know, getting just interactions with police. Because I didn't realize how difficult it was to, interact with them, because there's a lot of, public information offices that you have to go through, or there's a lot of, you think that you can just walk in there and say, here's what we want to do, but it's a little tougher than that. But of course, it's definitely been worth it. But those would be the three things, in starting this app, that I didn't foresee when we started this.
Yeah, with trying to get in touch with the police, you can walk down to your police station, you can talk to a cop, right?
Yep. Hmm.
But they have a job to do.
Right.
And so if they don't see what you're doing with your business as an opportunity for them, they're
Mhm.
probably not going to spend much time with you because
Right.
they have real things that they need to take care of. There's people who are
Yes.
speeding, there's people who are breaking into homes, they're robbing, whatever it is, they need to go focus on that. And so for them to be pulled away from that, you have to justify why it's worth their time for you to
Right.
share with them about this product or to learn more about them so that your product can better help them. And so, yeah, I could see that being a real challenge,
Yep.
trying to do that. Um, well, the next question that I have for you is something that a lot of founders struggle with,
Mhm.
and it's also a buzzword that's going around. It's
Yep.
work-life balance, right?
Hmm.
How are you and your other founders, um, how are you juggling work and then being a person and having that and not just working 24 hours a day or playing all the time and not getting anything done?
So my dad, he retired a few years back, and that's actually how Blue Jay started. Was he was supposed to be retired and, enjoy his days on a lazy boy, watching ESPN and Western movies, because that's his thing. But he just, something clicked with him where he was like, you know what, maybe I retired to do something more with my life. And, he started working on the foundational layers of Blue Jay during that time. And at the time, I was selling cars at BMW here, and I was trying to fit things in, because obviously everyone knows, with work-life balance at a dealership, there's no such thing. So for me, it was a lot of late nights. It was a lot of off days that were strictly devoted to Blue Jay. So, luckily, what happened was, last year we qualified for a grant, and we received some money from a local institution here in Oklahoma that kind of saw what we were doing as, you know, pioneering a space or trailblazing.
Yeah.
And it was a foundation for advanced science and technology. So, we received some money there, and it was enough to um, support me leaving BMW. So, I have my bills paid, if you want to call it that. But to me, this has always been a passion project. It's something that I would day and night take little to no money if to do, because it's something that I'm very passionate with. My mom, She works for the city in juvenile probation, so she's really close to police departments. A lot of my friends are police officers. A lot of my dad's friends are police officers. So, when you find something that really strikes a chord, their money really isn't an issue with it. So for the first 2 years, we were just grinding it out with, no money. So it's definitely a passion project for me to where, like I don't care if I get paid from this. I just want to see this do what I believe it can do. And that's, you know, humanize police officers and, help those people who feel vulnerable, have a better experience with police officers because they are truly public servants. And it's a shame that they have such a bad rap when there's so many of them out there that are doing good things.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many out there that are doing great things. But you talked about how for 2 years you were doing the grind,
Yep,
and that makes me think of the saying that there's a time and a season for all things,
absolutely.
right? Could you have done that grind of having to work your 9 to 5, which our sales is not 9 to 5, but having to work your job
Yep,
and do this for the next 5 years? Maybe you could have. It would have
yep,
hurt, right? But you definitely can do it for 2 years and
right.
then be able to focus on that. And so, having having said that, understanding that there's a time and a season,
Hmm.
and you put in the time that you needed to grind it to get it to a point where you could get funding, so that
Yep.
you can put away some of the grind and actually focus more on this. And so for me as an entrepreneur, understanding that life goes in cycles. When you start something new, there's going to be a lot that you have to put into it. But once
Right.
you get it built up, once you get it to where it's self-sufficient, then you're going to have more time to do things. Like your dad was working for forever and then he retired. And then he
Yep.
had a time in a season where he sat on the lazy boy and just watched his westerns and relaxed. But then he realized that there's a time and season for that too. And that quickly came to an end when he started this project.
Exactly.
And so you
That's where
can't be all work and you can't be all play. You have to find that balance between the two.
I believe that's why Blue Jay is where it is because, had we been able to, just, hey, let's do this. And then if we were fortunate enough just to have, the funds sitting in an offshore account or something crazy like that, or we found someone who was like, I love what you're doing, here's $1 million. That first 2 years is the foundational layer that I mentioned is that's the conversations with, the Hispanic chamber, the African American chamber talks with police departments, autism advocates like that. That first 2 years was truly what built Blue Jay up. And I don't think that Blue Jay would be as cohesive as it is had we not or had we had the funding when we started this out. You know what I mean? So, because there's a lot of stuff that you learn just from having conversations with people, and those conversations turn into ideas, and those ideas turn into, honestly, research. And at the end of it, we have 2.5 years of really solid research with all the communities that Blue Jay advocates for. And I think that's why we also have positioned ourselves where we are, is because, people know that we've done the work in truly trying to understand and learn and unlearn different things. And the same thing with police departments is, for the first time, they have people who want to assist them in their job rather than, reprimand them or have them face consequences. And I just think that 2 years was, worth it because now we've made something that truly fits everyone.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is fantastic. I hope that you continue to have success and you find a way to get the community to accept your app and the police departments, because the connection that it's making or going to be making when those things are fully integrated, it's going to be game changer. The key is to be able to establish confidence in your users, both on the law enforcement side and in the civilian side. And if you can do that, I think you're going to do great with this. So good luck with that. I hope everything works out. But I do want to just touch base and see what the future looks like for you. So as we're wrapping up this interview, what exciting plans or initiatives do you have for the next 6 to 12 months?
So we're currently piloting with a local police department here and, just getting the initial feedback of the product itself and making sure that it integrates well with their systems and they're able to use it and citizens can tell us how their experiences are with it. And after we have, we're shooting for 90 days of, feedback, and that's when we'll fully launch it. Because right now it's a closed beta, but our launch is going to be this summer. So everyone will be able to download BlueJay. The only real, handcuff will be police adoption. You know what I mean? So we have a feature in there where if you get pulled over, but your department doesn't have BlueJay yet, you're still able to manually fill out your traffic stop in which you'll receive your questionnaire on the officer. So that way you can still contribute to the bigger picture of BlueJay. But the next 6 to 12 months is just going to be boots on the ground, trying to get this exposed to every nook and cranny of Oklahoma at starting out and then eventually moving out. So it's just going to be a lot of marketing and advertising that follows the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, that sounds like you have your hands full with getting the word out there and getting it integrated and getting people to start to use it. So I think I think what you're doing is awesome, and I wish you the best of luck with everything that you're doing on that. Well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing some tips and insights and sharing your app with us. If people would like to connect with you and get to know you a little bit more, maybe get involved potentially, what should they do?
So the first thing would be we just launched our social media yesterday. So we're going to go, pretty hard on that. And that is on Instagram, bluejay.us. And of course, I like to interact with any and everyone similar to you. So my email is chris@bluejayapp.us. And the one thing I would encourage people, just because I've found such a, newfound perception and perspective on things, is if you see a police officer, go talk to them. Because, if you're someone who, may not see police in the best light, truly, there are great ones everywhere. And that's a big thing that our social media is going to be pushing is we feel the traffic stop is only scary because it's something that you just don't take the time to research every day. No one's just looking up how does a traffic stop go, but we just feel like the more you take the time to meet a police officer, talk to a police officer, the less scary it is. And as hard as it is, there are some people who have been negatively affected by police officers, but at the end of the day, I don't know you from Adam and they don't know us. So it's one of those things where, just having a fresh perspective on things really can turn things around. And there are a lot of good police officers out there. So a part of what BlueJay is truly is just to try to enhance the image of police and, ultimately revolutionize the traffic stop. So it's one of those things where it doesn't happen every single day, but when it does happen, we want it to go smoothly. So a part of that is just taking the time to meet a police officer, talk to one, and just, educate. That's what we're trying to do with social media, is to educate, not escalate. Because one of the reasons traffic stops are scary is because you just really don't know what to expect. So you can find lots of helpful tips and tidbits on there from, law enforcement officers and different people like that. So I'm very excited for what's to come, and I hope that a lot of people can see the value and benefit from what BlueJay offers.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show. You heard it there from Chris. If you're interested in learning more about BlueJay, what they're doing, or if you just want to talk to Chris and get to know him better, go to his website or any other method that he shared there to get up with him. And guys, well, this is another episode of the Success in Motion podcast in the books, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks for tuning into Success in Motion. Want to share your story? Visit successinmotionpodcast.com/guest to apply and be featured on the show.